Welcome everybody to video number 15, and as promised, we will now begin tackling the C styles. So in the past videos, it's taken us all of 14 videos to discuss the A up to the B styles. And for today's lesson, I'd like to go through the YouTube page where you found me. So this is IELTS Einstein over here. And let's click on the videos part over here. So doing that, you will now see all the videos that have been created thus far. We began with video 1 over at the end, and the latest video that was posted is video number 14. Like I said before, I'm really trying to find a way how to reverse the order of the presentation of these videos, but nobody seems to know. So I guess this is really how YouTube works. So that being the case, I would just like to remind everybody to please make sure that you watch the video in their numerical order, video 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. Alright, so just as a reminder, video 1 to 4, please do not forget, are talking of one-sided essays or essays that only talk about one side of an issue. And from video 5 onwards, all the way up to video number 14, we are talking about crossover essays or essays that discuss explicitly two sides of a particular issue. So similar to when we introduced the B3 style, for example, we had a primer video. This is really a support video in preparation for the discussion of the lesson on the B3 style. So that's what we're going to be doing today. In order to discuss the C1 and the C2 styles, I'd like to begin by showing you two passer essays. So the first essay is a 7.5 essay from there. That's the screenshot of the results as it came out from one of my students. As you can see, the overall band score was 8, and this was helped by the fact that the listening was 8.5 and reading was 9. The writing score was 7.5, and so was the speaking score at 7.5. These are really impressive scores. But let's focus on the writing and why the student scored this output for that particular round at October to 2018. So as you can see, the topic prompt is asking about the family tradition of eating together during mealtime is disappearing. Why is this so? And what are the effects of this to the family and the community? So as you can see, the C styles are really essays where the question prompt is explicitly asking for two questions. So the first question is why is this so? And the second question is what are the effects of this to the family and the community? So please be careful of the C styles because many students are somehow are just used to the one-sided to being confronted with one question, and they ultimately end up missing out on either one of the two questions. So this in effect is what we call the C style. So let's look at the essay proper from this student of mine from October last year, 2018. So traditions lie in the heart of every culture. These norms and beliefs are passed on from the elders to the younger generation to ensure continuance of practices that define the intricacies and uniqueness of a group of people. All of that is really what we call the hook statement. Uh, we began discussing the elements of the introduction in the past videos, and uh, so for today I will just be highlighting the various elements of the introductory paragraph. And this is now what we call the paraphrase. The new era, however, has been witness to the profound decrease in the merit of these family traditions, particularly the practice of sharing meals together. So the paraphrase is really where the writer merely rephrased the proposition. The third element is what we call the forecast statement. This emerging phenomena stems from numerous cases and could have significant impacts to the family and the society in general. So what the forecast statements does is to give the reader an idea as to what the content of the essay is, the scope of the discussion that will be made in the essay. So that having been done, the writer is now ready to proceed with the rest of the essay. So remember, the first question is why is this so? So here goes the writer trying to cite some reasons. To begin, the communal practices of the early society had led to the much valued tradition of gathering together during mealtime. Our ancestors, recognizing the considerable benefits of living in groups against solitary existence, could have realized the positive impacts of families eating meals together, such as stronger family ties, which in turn promote a harmonious relationship between the members of the community, hence ensuring its continuing practice for generations to come. The modern times, unfortunately, may have seen such traditions impractical and obsolete, giving rise to the significant drop in the number of individuals carrying the tradition of sharing mealtime as a family. This entire paragraph is really just setting the stage. It really doesn't answer the first question yet. What the writer did here is just to give a corresponding historical treatment on the tradition of eating meals together. And this is now the part where the writer that paragraph really wasn't fully necessary. Uh, this is really just like a continuation of the hook statement or the paraphrase. But I wouldn't argue against it since it somehow gets the right thing going, so to speak. And so this is the part where the writer is now actually answering the first question, why is this so? One causal factor attributed to the diminishing trend of modern families eating together is the discrepancy in the schedule of activities of the family members. So maybe we can underline that as the bullet, the discrepancy in the schedule of activities there. The contemporary era mirrors a society. This is now the part where, so that's a topic sentence over there, and this is now the part where the writer expounds and expands on the topic sentence. The contemporary era mirrors a society where parents spend majority of the day working to put money on the table, while children are occupied with school and extracurricular activities. These varied schedules, so let's just make a correction over there. These varied schedules could inevitably lead, okay, these are minor errors, don't worry about these, to some members missing family meals and thus sharing less quality time together, which negatively impact on the child's psyche as it could perpetuate, again, there's another error there, it could perpetuate feelings of neglect and abandonment on the part of the children. Such scenario could result to the heightened vulnerability of these young minds to the negative elements of the society like bad-mannered peers, which could encourage criminal and rebellious acts. That's a slight exaggeration there, if you ask me. The society as a whole could be impacted negatively as the rise in juvenile delinquents equate to higher crime rate and productivity decline, as less students are able to graduate in the economic vantage point. So again, for me, this is just really stretching a bit because I don't think this is really a global problem, so to speak, and I always remind my students to think globally. Maybe this situation is true in a local level, but not on a global scale. So that's kind of a weak elaboration of the negative effects of the lack of family meals. Another undeniable root of the problematic drop in families gathering around mealtime is the addiction and dependency of millennials to gadgets and technology. So we can underline that as the second topic sentence that answers the first question, why is this so? Although the older generation tend to be more traditional and gather together during scheduled mealtime, young individuals could find themselves distracted by the lure of their favorite TV shows and the perceived urgency of the virtual reality to share meal times with their elders. This could be a negative development as the cut in the interaction between these family members could equate to significant differences in hobbies and interests. Over time, let's make some corrections there. Such scenario could lead to varied beliefs and norms of the young and the old, which could further widen the gap between these two generations. A society where the elders who possess the wisdom of the past and the young who holds the future of the country could not set aside their differences to work towards a common objective could make for a disunited and disorganized community and its leaders. I think that paragraph is really better. That's a better paragraph. So that's the second response to the question, why are family meals disappearing? And so the second question, remember is what are the effects of this to the family and the community. All right, so what we've actually seen here is that in these two paragraphs, the writer did cite two bullets to explain what causes the technology. And at the same time, in each paragraph, the writer answered the second question already. So the second question is over there. What are the negative effects? And the second question is over here. What are the negative effects of these? So it really is quite a different style for this writer to use, wherein the writer answered two questions. The first question being, why is this happening? And then the second question being, what are the negative effects? The writer answered two questions in each paragraph there. Very creative technique for this particular writer. Moving on to the third body paragraph. This is already the concluding paragraph. So to conclude, the lessening value of family tradition of having meals together is a reality of the modern times. This could profoundly impact both the family dynamics and the society in undesirable ways. Fortunately, we are at the moment in history where the solutions are at hand. Okay, so ideally the conclusion should just be here. And the way I read it, the writer apparently is already about to recommend solutions to the problem in this part. So all of these could have ideally been in the third body paragraph. It's not really advisable for students to continue arguing towards the concluding paragraph. The concluding paragraph is really traditionally very short. It's really just a summary of all that has been made, of all the discussions that have been made in the body paragraphs. The concluding paragraph is really just the amplification of all the points that have been made in the body paragraphs. But that being said, let's just continue reading. Fortunately, we are at a moment in history where the solutions are at hand. The increasing demand to once again strengthen family bond through continuance of traditions has led significant shifts, particularly to social media that is presently encouraging family members to take the time to share meals together through infomercials and family-oriented documentaries. Also, parents and children are finding creative ways to get around their busy schedules to eat together through time management and finding common free time. Finally, parents are having stricter rules on the use of gadgets and time watching TV to avoid distractions during mealtime, and are establishing pathways to reconnect with the younger generation, encouraging two-way conversations and sharing anecdotes and experiences when eating meals together. These measures and more could be undertaken to solve the apparent loss in the merit of family sharing mealtime. All that is needed is the will to be the game changer and fight an emerging phenomena which could have negative repercussions on the family circle and the society as a whole. So all of these are three problem solvers that the writer recommended in order to clean up the negative impact of the lack of family meals together. So that's it. Remember what the writer did here is to recommend problem solvers because essentially essay writing is really a problem solving exercise. Don't forget that, please. So for those who want to go through the essay, look through the essay again in their entirety. So I'm just trying to fit the introductory paragraph over here and the first body paragraph in one frame. So you may pause the video if you want to read through the essay again. And then we are now in the second body paragraph over here and the third body paragraph there, in which the writer answered the two questions in each body paragraph. There you go. And then let's now isolate the concluding paragraph over here. So again, like I stated, the highlighted statements over here could have been the fourth body paragraph instead of in the concluding paragraph, because the conclusion is ideally where you just amplify all the discussions that have been made. Alright, so that being said, that essay was a 7.5 essay from my student. So if you notice, the two-part question here is actually very one-sided. So in this part, you just list a number of reasons why this trend is happening. And then in the second question, what are the effects of this family to the community? Again, it's another one-sided question. So you just list a number of effects to the family and the community. And of course, before you conclude, don't forget to solve the problem. Remember, task 2 writing is a problem-solving exercise. So that being said, looking at this particular question prompt, this particular two-part question, it really is easy as regards to the structure of it. There's really no crossover. This is really just a one-sided. These two are just one-sided questions. So that kind of mirrors the discussion we've had on videos 1 to 4, wherein you have a discussion on one-sided essays. However, coming into video 5 all the way up to video number 14 over here, these are now the crossovers. So, meaning these are explicitly talking about two sides of the issue. So, remember the two-part question has a particular crossover element as well. And we can see that from my student in December 2016 who scored a band 7 with this one. Those are her scores. Listening is band 9, reading is band 8. Writing and speaking are both at 7 for an overall score of band 8 still. Very impressive results for my students. So here's the proposition. Scientists are now saying that by studying a 3-year-old child's behavior, it can already be seen that he will grow up to be a criminal. And then the prompt is, again, this is a two-part question. So this is really the C style. To what extent is a crime committed under human nature? And do you think it's possible to stop a child from becoming a criminal? So if you focus on the first question, to what extent is a crime committed under human nature, then that really is, for all intents and purposes, a to what extent do you agree or disagree question. So what the writer did here is, remember, for a to what extent question, you can answer it one-sidedly by just agreeing to it. However, if you disagree to it, then what you need to do now is to apply the kill style, wherein you first discuss the agree arguments and then follow this up with the kill arguments. That is the cardinal rule for for the kill style. It's always a two-step process. So what my student did here is actually discuss the agree arguments first, and then proceeded by killing this. And then, so this is a particular two-part question where you are actually dealing with a crossover or two sides of an issue. And then in answer to that second question, what the writer did here is recommend solutions to the problem. So this, for all intents and purposes, is the compromise style. So, or the B3 style. So the writer mentions two sides of the issue here, and then solves the problem over here. Alright, so let's see how the writer particularly did that. So experts are now saying that by observing a 3-year-old child's conduct, a prediction whether the child will turn out to be unlawful as the child grows to be an adult can already be made. This is what we call the paraphrase already. There's really no hook statement anymore for this writer. I did mention before that the paraphrase is the only mandatory element of the 4 elements in the introductory paragraph. Don't worry, we'll be discussing that further in a separate video, as I keep saying. However, this opinion is one-sided and is not entirely the basis of a child's forthcoming. With these contradicting views, it is worthwhile to look into the prevention of the possibility that a child might turn into a criminal. Wait, let me just correct that. As he grows to be an adult. So there. This part where this is what you call the forecast statement. What you can see here is the writer is already about to, you can actually read into these, read between the lines, and you can see that the writer is about to perform the kill style. There. So remember, the kill is always a two-step process, wherein you mention the opposing opinion and then kill the opposing opinion afterwards. And remember the discussion, the definition of the kill. The kill is where to kill an argument is to render the opposing opinion completely false or illogical. So in this first body paragraph, the writer is now talking about the opposing opinion. To begin with, a crime is committed under human nature if it was due to anger, envy, and revenge. These are quite strong emotions. Let's just make the corrections over there. That can trigger a human to carry out wrongdoing. So those are the opposing opinions over there. And then the writer is now about to kill. Nevertheless, this can be addressed as early as possible in order to prevent a child in becoming a criminal. So these are the kill arguments here. Admittedly, there's no doubt that a child will always have the possibility of becoming a criminal. However, with the love and support and guidance of parents, a child will learn the concept of right or wrong. Thus, at a young age, the child will already be exposed to decision making, whether it is a good or bad thing to do, and will be further enhanced through time as the child turns into an adult. Additionally, the teacher should also have a great responsibility in reinforcing the discipline that was already taught at home. Hence, a child will always have a support in order to decide properly. Not only that, but the right selection of peers also plays an important part in hindering the possibility of a child becoming a criminal as he turns into an adult. What you have here are three kill arguments. For the first one is the guidance of the parents is over there. So we will just underline that. The second kill argument is the teachers over there. And then the third argument is the peers, the right selection of peers there. So that being said, the writer has already killed the opposing opinion in this to what extent question, wherein the writer first mentioned about the possibility of a child becoming a criminal once he turns 3. I mean, the child already having the displaying the tendencies of becoming a criminal once the child turns 3. And then the writer killed it afterwards with 3 succeeding kill arguments. And now the writer is now on the way to answering this second question. Do you think it's possible to stop a child from becoming a criminal? So essentially what happened here is, in answer to this second question, the writer already, in performing the kill, the writer already successfully answered the second question as well. So this is really quite a combination of strategies, so to speak. So again, there are the opposing opinions. To what extent is a child crime committed under human nature? And then after that, the writer proceeded to kill with all of these arguments. In so doing, these kill arguments are really already the response to the second question. And so it's time to conclude. In a nutshell, human nature has a broad spectrum and emotions can trigger a human to do a crime. Even so, with the right guidance from parents and teachers and with the right selection of friends, a person will be able to make the right decisions that will hinder a child to becoming a criminal when the child grows older. So, very nice. Let me fit all of that in a frame again for you to just look back on there. Alright, so this is the question proposition and this is the introduction over here. You may want to pause the video at this point if you want to read through the video again. And then this is now over here. What you see is the first body paragraph wherein the opposing opinion is over there. And then these are now the kill arguments which kill the said opposing opinion. And at the same time answers the second question, which is how do you think it's possible to stop a child from becoming a criminal? Okay, let's fit all of that in a frame. Let's fit the concluding paragraph in a frame as well there. So you might want to pause the video at this point so that you can just see how the rest of it looks like. So let me emphasize that this second essay is really different because what the writer did is really a crossover. Instead of just answering the question one-sidedly, what the answer did for this part is actually to cross over to the kill, and similarly for this part, where the writer did is cross over to the kill. So as you can see, what you've seen here are examples of the two-part question essays wherein there are some questions that are really one-sided in nature, wherein you just outline or list a number of answers. But there also are two-part questions where you'll have to do the crossover. So that in essence is what we call the C1 and the C2 style, and that will be the subject of discussion in a future video. And as you can see, the C styles are really just an extension of the Five problem solving styles that we've learned so far. You had the A1 style and the A2 style, and the B1, there's the B1 style over there, and then the B2 style is over here, and then the B3 style is over there. These are really just the five fundamental argumentative strategies, and that's all you need to learn. And then once you learn these five fundamental strategies, then you can apply them accordingly for the two-part question prompts, or the C style, so the C1 and the C2 style. We'll discuss that further in the next video, come video number 16. So again, if there are any questions, please don't forget to posit your question in the comments boxes below. And don't forget to click subscribe so that you will be duly alerted when the new videos like this one will come out. Thank you again, everybody. I'll see you in video 16. Bye.